Nature Nino parents. This is Sally Anderson, and we're here with today's module in the Nurturing with Nature parenting series. We are going to be talking about wonderful play, and that play is much more than going to the park. We've got some nice little quotes smattered throughout here. We all love a good Mr. Rogers quote. Play gives children a chance to practice what they are learning. So just really quickly, this Nurturing in Nature series is a collaboration between the City of Albuquerque Parks and Recreation, Open Spaces Division, and Nature Niños, which is a program, a youth program of the New Mexico Wildlife Federation. Play is the work of the child, as said by Maria Montessori. Too true. So some just really quick housekeeping things here. We would love if you could pop your email into the chat box and then just use the raise hand or chat functions if you'd like to say something. We hope to have some time throughout too for some questions and answers. I saw that one of our mamas here today is outside. We encourage you to do that and carve out time for yourself if you can. Check our Facebook page after any and all of our Nurturing in Nature modules, as we will often, we will post the recording, but we will also include follow-up activities, topic sheets, things like that. The Zoom password and link remains the same for all the modules. And please join us in our Nature Niños Rewilding Childhood Revolution. That is what we are working towards. So today, Sunday, June 14th, we are focused on wonderful play. Our next up module is in 2 weeks on the 28th, and that one is going to be on backyard adventures, designing on a dime. And we will have a special landscape playscape architect joining us to give you some really great ideas. So we hope you will come back. Following that, we've got 2 left, hiking and exploring with littles, wandering and wondering together. And then finally, we are going to talk about acorns to oak trees, how being nurtured by nature grows stewards, and perhaps be doing some community story telling and sharing. So moving on here, play is the highest form of research. Albert Einstein, he should know. He should know. So just a little bit about me, Sally, your presenter for this series. I am a 30-year education veteran. I have a master's, almost a second master's in special education and early childhood education, as well as educational administration. I am a Forest and Nature Schools certified practitioner. I run Soul Forest School, which is in the East Mountains here in Albuquerque. I'm also a Tinker Garden leader, and we'll learn a little bit about that in a little bit. And I do all kinds of other things that we won't get into, but my focus is primarily early childhood and nature, and the sort of junction of those two things. And I would best describe myself as a guardian of childhood. Today, we have a special guest called Amber Vasquez of Twirled House. Welcome, Amber. And Amber is going to unmute herself, and she's going to tell us a little bit about her and the work that she does.
I'm Amber Vasquez, and I'm actually I have a dance background. So I was a professional dancer for 10 years in New York City. And I did a lot of teaching. When I moved to Taos about 16 years ago, I started teaching dance in the schools with an integrative arts school, and really just learned how to teach regular school content through dance and music and theater, and it became a passion of mine. And so for the past 10 years, I've been doing that and creating a program, and really discovering what play is and how we can insert that into everyday learning and how important it is.
Wow, that's really super interesting. You come to working with children through this whole other avenue. And I love when that happens. I just love that play too is so huge and all
Yeah, and
encompassing.
I always tell people that after 16 years of, well, my whole life training to be a dancer, I finally figured out what I wanted to be about 10 years ago. So, but yeah, so I've recently, over the past 3 years, joined forces with Twirl, and we are making magic happen in the schools, just putting play back into schools, and it's been really fun.
You want to tell us a little bit about the actual center that we'll see a picture of a little bit later in Taos, Twirl?
Yes, sorry, I forget that not
Oh,
everyone
that's
knows.
okay.
Um,
We should
so,
know about it. We will know about it after today.
yes. So I am the early childhood program coordinator for Twirl Play and Discovery Space. And Twirl is a 501c3 organization in Taos, New Mexico. And they do a bunch of different things. They offer a free community play space. It has an outdoor space and an indoor space. They provide free early childhood classes, music, theater, dance, and a lot of other things, arts and crafts. There's an on-site field trip for schools where we teach STEAM. We do in-school programming, we do family engagement programs, and even big community events where we bring lots and lots of people together under STEAM and play-based learning.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, anything else you want to tell us about you, Amber? Are you a mother yourself?
I am a mother. I have a 4-year-old who runs my life. And yeah, I've been teaching for years and years, so I really feel like I have a million children. So
I know the feeling, and I am a veteran educator and a mother of just one child who just turned 17. Oh my goodness.
wow.
So very much a man child at this point, very much a man child. Awesome. Well, this moving ahead here, Lev Vygotsky is one of my favorite early childhood theorists. He says, in play, a child always behaves beyond their average age, above their daily behavior. In play, it is as though they were a head taller than themselves. I love that. I love that. This next slide here is just going to ask us just to pause for a moment and think about a fond childhood play memory of your own. And if you'd like to share, you can just type something into the chat box or unmute yourself. We'd love to hear one of your play memories. And usually the first thing that pops up in your mind is the best one to go with. So Amber and I are going to just sit quiet for a minute and see if anybody has anything they'd like to share with us. And if not, she and I might share a favorite memory of ours.
Hey.
Hi.
So I'll share one of mine. Instantly, I think of like going to explore outside with my brother, and we would always just look for crawdads or tadpoles. We would just go adventure on our own, and we were in a safe spot to do that. So my parents were comfortable with that, but it was very fun.
Awesome. So it sounds like nature play figured into things. That's awesome. Thanks, Jordan.
Yeah.
Anybody else want to share? Amber, even you, if there's a memory that comes up, it would be interesting if you actually grew up in New York City, if you've got something, Amber, that you want to share, because
I actually didn't grow up in New York City. I grew up in Albuquerque.
Oh, okay.
But I do have one. I have a twin brother, and we spent so much time in the foothills chasing lizards and trying to catch snakes. And I mean, every fond memory I have is us doing that.
That's so wonderful. And even me, I grew up in New Jersey of all places, and New Jersey kind of has a bad rap. But let me tell you, it is verdant and green and hilly and lush. And my fondest childhood memories are definitely playing in my backyard, making mud pies, that kind of thing. So what I find interesting is the three memories that were just shared here are all nature you know, outdoor based memories, which is interesting, definitely. This next slide, just an FYI, I will post this on the Nature Niños page after this, actually, is the way I'll take care of that, Amber. We had a different plan earlier. Peter Gray is an amazing man to know about if you do not know about him. He is a researcher out of Harvard University. He is what he refers to as an evolutionary psychologist. And he talks about something called Mother Nature's pedagogy. So he explains in great detail how, you know, Mother Nature sort of takes care of our children if we allow sort of the room and the freedom for children to kind of find their own way. Lots and lots of learning and creativity and socializing and all the good stuff that we want to happen in the early childhood years just unfolds really, really naturally. In this particular TED Talk, he really gets into the nitty gritty of how important play is to the development of a young child, and also the really sad and kind of dire state that we're in because there's been such a decline of play. He also touches base on a few different types of play. Primarily, he talks about risky and adventurous play and why that's really important. So I definitely encourage listeners to please go and learn about Peter Gray and listen to this TED Talk because it will probably shift the way you parent, and if you're a teacher, it will shift the way you teach. He is a gem in the early childhood world. All right. So really quickly, there are a number of early childhood researchers, experts, scientists, professionals who have essentially described the development of play through a variety of scales, shall we say. There are many, but these next two slides are pretty standard, and it's just a good idea to have a basic framework in your mind as a parent of what stages children will actually pass through. So I'm going to speak to this pretty quick. This particular one is looking at social stages. So there's onlooker play, which really is little ones and just sort of sitting there and watching what other people are doing, and the child might be reluctant to join, and that is very, very normal. An example in the early childhood classroom is, you know, kids might be playing completely in the same area and sort of looking at each other, but they're not interacting yet because it's not developmentally appropriate. It's not the way that we are built. Solitary play is next, and this is when a child kind of plays by himself or herself. If the child is older and exhibiting this type of play, it could be because they're choosing it, or sometimes children who have diverse abilities, it might take them a little bit longer to kind of move through these stages, but this is typically around, you know, 18 months up to 3 years, something like that. After that comes parallel play, which sounds a little bit like onlooker play, but it's a little bit different. Children are sort of intentionally sitting side by side. They might be sharing materials. There might be even some limited, you know, back and forth, but they're not exactly planning together yet. They're sort of side by side playing on their own. But it's where we first see that sort of social coming together because they are in near vicinity to one another. Next is associative play, and this is group play, children playing with the same materials or toys with similar activities. They might, for little spurts of time, work together, and this is typical for the 3.5 to 4.5-year-old. So working together can still be quite tricky because we haven't, quote, learned how to share yet or how to problem solve. And again, we haven't learned those things because we're developmentally not prepared to learn those things. And we want our children to go through these stages so they can get to this point. So the example here that they have written down is 2 children playing at an easel and they're sharing markers in an eraser, but they're making their own separate pictures. So they're just beginning to kind of have an interchange. And then finally, cooperative play, which, you know, we get really excited when we start to see that. This is group play. Children negotiate the play together. They accept and create roles of play. There are play scenarios. You know, it could be two children playing together with baby dolls. One is mom, the other one is dad. This is 4, 5, 6 years and up. One thing that's really important to think about with play is really, another word for play is freedom. And what is so fabulous about play with young children is you get to quit, you know. It's really motivating in terms of cooperative play that there is a understanding that I don't have to join if I don't want to, or I don't have to do that if I don't want to. So it creates a motivation in the group or in the individual child, if they do want to be a part of the group, to problem solve, to think together, to see how they could be more inclusive. And, you know, if this is supported in a really gentle way with an adult who, you know, knows something about play, wonderful things can happen through that cooperative play. I'm going to go to the next slide, and then I'm going to see if Amber's got anything she wants to add as I just motor mouth through this. So these are some types of play. Functional play is basically sensory motor in flavor, you know, so it begins before age 2. It lasts throughout the later play stages. It's definitely the predominant form for infants and toddlers. So this is where you see babies, you know, exploring textures, and they're putting things in their mouths, or toddlers climbing on things. You know, it's really about learning how to use their senses and their fine motor and gross motor skills. Next comes symbolic play or representational play. This might include constructional, you know, constructing things, or dramatic play, acting things out. This can begin at age 2, and it's typically mastered a little bit older. Dramatic play, 3 to 5 years, that age frame is a real favorite. So, you know, constructional play, it's pretty self-explanatory, building towers with blocks, Legos, you know, using Play-Doh to make a pizza, things like that. Dramatic play, I think it's pretty self-explanatory too, but, you know, it could be dressing up and being your favorite superhero, or playing restaurant, or like a child taking his shoe off and holding it up to his ear and hello, hello, calling someone. And then finally, there's gameplay. So this is, you know, I need to be honest, we don't see as much of this these days. We see organized games, like sports games. But this harkens back to things like, you know, playing leapfrog, or lightning tag, or, you know, dodgeball, board games, those kind of things. So possibly with us all being under the COVID restrictions, some of this gameplay is coming back into practice. Amber, do you have anything you want to add with just that general play information?
You know, I do want to add, Twirl just did a whole thing on gameplay, and he talked about how families who just do one night a week of regular game playing, whether that be outside kick the can, or hula hooping together, or playing Monopoly, they are happy, they understand each other better, they work better together, and it ticks all the, you know, the boxes as far as release of stress and, you know, all these things we're going through right now. It's a really good way for us stuck at home to deal with our lives, just in a fun, exciting way.
That's really awesome. I'm so glad to hear that you did that at Twirl, and also really glad that you chimed in, because you're right. I think those games existed for a reason. And, you know, there are like computer games and things like that. And we at Nature Niños are not anti-technology. In fact, Peter Gray talks about how every culture has a tool that sort of represents their culture. So for instance, in that Decline of Play talk, he will talk about hunter-gatherer societies, or like tribes in Africa where, you know, maybe a machete is used to chop down whatever it is that they need to chop down. And onlookers will actually notice like a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old being able to use this, you know, machete. And people are like, what? Well, in that culture, allowing the child to sort of experience that tool at a young age, since they are going to be growing up and expected to use that tool, is hugely important. In our culture, computers, these, you know, we wouldn't be here right now on Zoom if we didn't have a computer screen right in front of us, right? So it is very much a tool of our culture. And there are computer games that one can play and that are educational on the screen. But I do want to emphasize, I think that 3D gameplay, as Amber just brought up, is so important. And, you know, just being there in the moment, in the flesh, is a really special thing. So I'm glad you shared that example. This is a whole list of other types of play. I run a forest school, an all outdoor based forest school in the East Mountains. So all of this type of play is play that we see when we're out there, and I will just read the names rather than elaborating so we can get to the good stuff in a minute. We're just sort of setting a stage here for you. Adventurous and risky play. This might include like rough and tumble play, for instance, or like climbing to great heights. Things like this, I guess I said I wasn't going to speak much, but I do want to elaborate on this type of play because it's really, really important. I believe we are living in a culture where we tend to bubble wrap our children, and we are very risk averse. And, you know, a whole other module can be planned just around this piece. In fact, I was part of a teacher training all of last week through Prescott College where I was a presenter, and Friday I presented on adventurous and risky play and supporting that type of play. I would like all parents to just do a little research on this and think about this, because we also live in a culture where children turn 16 years old and we hand them, you know, one of these, and I'm not sure where my keys are. I think they're on my belt here, you know, and a set of car keys, and we say go. And I don't know about you as parents, but for me as a mother, that's really scary to consider that my child's first real experience with risk, managing risk, might be a cell phone and driving a car at the same time. So I'm very passionate about bringing that type of play back. Also in a natural environment and in other environments, I'm sure when we hear about Amber's environment, many of these things are going to play true too. There's communication play, you know, the use of words, signals, nuances, creative play, deep play. That's where children really drop in, and it's really sort of serving the emotional and spiritual needs of a child when they're kind of really dropped into play like that. Dramatic play, exploratory play, fantasy play, imaginative play. I know we're going to hear about this with Amber in a minute. Locomotor play, mastery play. This play is focused on feeling in and taking control of physical elements in the environment. So we'll hear a little bit more about other names for this type of play, but it might be like balancing on a log or gaining a new skill, feeling like, you know, I'm in charge. I can't exactly say this word properly. Recapitulative play. I think I did it. So that is sort of like replaying, almost primal. I think another word for it could be primal play, like going back in time and, you know, we're going to have our campsite, we're going to build a shelter, kind of like people used to live and play back in the day. Rough and tumble play, many of us remember that as a child. Social play, sociodramatic play, and symbolic play. So you can see there's a lot of repetition here. Finally, what I wanted to mention is Tinkergarten. Tinkergarten is a really amazing statewide, well, nationwide actually, program that's a little bit like Mama and Me Music or Mama and Me Yoga. You can go onto the Tinker Garden webpage and learn more about it. But they are about getting children and families outdoors. And they like to tinker, but they also like to bring in lots of nature components. So the way that they tend to look at the development of play is through the European model of what's called behavioral schemas. And this has become my favorite way of looking at play, actually. Behavioral schemas are patterns of repeatable behavior that occur across cultures and places. It doesn't matter if a child is in China, Texas, France, or Kenya. You know, there are things about their play that categorize their play that is going to be the same across the board for every 3-year-old or every 5-year-old. Experts believe that when children repeat these behaviors across situations, they grow intellectually, creatively, and even socially. Children gain knowledge and confidence through their play, which then prepares them for later learning. And this type of play, this behavioral schemas, and we're going to explain what they are in a moment, is easily enjoyed through the use of loose parts and nature play. And we'll talk a little bit about loose parts and nature play towards the end of the presentation. But this type of play is really highly engaging to children. So the Tinker Garden behavioral schemas, or again, this is based out of the European play workers tradition. We do not have a play worker tradition in the United States. I wish we did. But particularly in the UK, there is a strong profession of people who are trained specifically to support children in their play, separate from or sometimes in addition to being like an early childhood teacher. It's quite fascinating. So anyways, there are seven different areas: transporting, rotation, circulation, trajectory, positioning, enveloping, enclosing, connecting, and transforming. So these are all behaviors that we see. So transporting, you can imagine a 2-year-old, maybe they have like a little beach pail. They're going to be all about filling up that beach pail and dumping it out, filling it, carrying it somewhere and dumping it out. So that's sort of transporting, carrying something from one place to another, a wheelbarrow. You know, there are numerous examples. Rotation and circulation. This could be as simple as the child who likes to watch the washing machine go round and round. Or maybe they like to spin. And I will let you parents know that, you know, playgrounds these days are sort of designed against these things happening, which are quite natural and all children need. And oftentimes children will still find a way, for instance, to rotate. And sometimes because the playground isn't set up for that, more harm can actually be done than if we just sort of allowed that natural behavior to come through. So, you know, that rotation circulation might be just that, like being on a tire swing and you're going round and round and round. And children need that because it develops their vestibular and their balance system. It's really, really important. Trajectory, think of a straight line. So it might be walking along a log. It might be climbing up a ladder. It might be being on a swing and just going back and forth. Positioning is, you know, setting all your little things up. Maybe your little dolls. You're the teacher and you're teaching your little dolls or your little cars. Numerous ways in which we can actually imagine young children positioning their loose parts or their toys. Enveloping or enclosing. The classic is like playing under the sheets or building like a, you know, a pillow castle or a fort with sheets inside your house. Connecting would be things like, you know, Legos, other little things that you kind of put together. And then finally, transforming is the idea of taking one thing and transforming it into something else. So, you know, having a simple Play-Doh and turning it into hot dogs, or mud play is a good, you know, a good example, and what children will create from mud play. So that was a lot of talking. It is important to have an idea and an understanding that play is truly, truly, truly the work of the child. We in our culture tend to dismiss play and we don't think children really need it. and we don't think that it's very important, and we don't understand it. We just kind of poo-poo. We kind of go, oh, they're just playing. But play is magic. Play is wonder. Play is soul satisfying, and play is so very, very crucial to the young child. So I'm going to now, with great pleasure, turn it over to Amber, and I would like for her, first of all, to just share whatever comments she might have, as I had gone very quickly through all of those slides, and what her thoughts in general are about play. And then she's going to share with us a really wonderful, in the early childhood world, we often refer to it as a study, an early childhood study, but a really exciting thing that she got to be a part of with some of the children that she works with, that really will shine through all of these examples of play that we just talked about. So we will encourage you, as you listen to her story, to think about if you can kind of pinpoint some of those stages of play or some of that behavioral schema that we just went through. So Amber, first of all, what are your general comments on play or the slides? And then please take us to Twirl and what we're going to learn about today.
You know, I love the behavioral schemas, and I think it's really important for parents to have a general understanding of those. Because as a parent, you could give your child a game and then watch them take all the pieces and put them in a box and then carry the box home. And you're thinking, well, they're not playing right. And, you know, if you understand the schemas, you understand what exactly they're doing. They aren't playing, you might intend them to, but they are transporting, and that is something all in its own. And there's lots of ways you can support that if you understand what schemas they're kind of going through. So I think that's a really, really great thing for parents to be aware of.
I agree. I totally agree.
But,
and then what are your feelings as a, because I'm sure you, like me, would define yourself as being like a guardian of childhood and all about play. What's your general thoughts around how important play is for children?
I think it's criminal that we take play away and have them sit in a room. I mean, even 3-year-olds are given worksheets and given things to, you know, you have to trace this over and over and over again. And that is, I mean, that's one way of learning, but our biology is to learn through play. That's just how we're set up. That's how we're created. So to really support that is really important for our kids.
Very well said. So now Amber's going to show off her new really fly tech skills, because she's going to share her screen. And she's going to talk us through a really exciting play story, shall we say. So go ahead. Why don't you go and share your screen?
Yes. Okay, so here we go.
Yep. The moment we've all been waiting for.
The moment I've been thinking about all night. Okay, so here we go. This is Twirl. Twirl Play and Discovery Space is located in Taos, New Mexico. And as I said earlier, we are a 501c3, and our whole mission is play and collaboration and exploration. So all of our programming is based on that. We really strive towards a play-based learning, and we encourage our participants to create and explore and play together. Now, we strive towards true play-based learning, and that means it is self-directed, it's open-ended, and it's the choosing of the participants. So they go and they choose what they want to do. But when we take our programs into the schools, that's not always possible. So I'm going to talk about a program we called Wonder Play, and it provided opportunities of play and exploration within a structured curriculum. And it's just kind of an example of how we put those things together. So this program, oh, and let me change my slide. Did I do it? Yes. This project is in collaboration with the Paseo, which is an annual art festival that brings projections, performance, art installations to the streets of Taos. And every year, Twirl partners with this Paseo to provide like a collaborative art installation, as well as an art outreach program. So we go into the schools and we take these themes and we teach them. And this particular year was about connections. And so Twirl chose the world of mushrooms and mycelium, the underground world, as our connections. And if you don't know anything about mycelium, it's incredible. It's just
Oh, fascinating. That documentary. I love the documentary.
yes, yes.
It's called, but I know it's a great documentary. It played here in Albuquerque a few times.
I can't remember.
Fabulous fungi. Fabulous fungi.
However, I should caution, it's not great for kids, but it's definitely great for parents.
Yes, that documentary.
Yeah. So we decided to do that. Let me see if I can. Aha. I love this little girl. She's so cute. So my job was to create a play-based integrative arts school program that would bring this kind of mycelium concept alive for ages 2 through 6, and actually up to 7. And trying to explain a complicated fungal system and its interconnections to the ecosystem to 2-year-olds is tricky. But you know, that's kind of what I'm all excited about all the time. So I went with this idea that kids are naturally curious about everything. And I went in with a packet of white mushrooms from the grocery store, and we said, you are scientists, and this is how scientists learn. They use all their senses. What do you see? What do you hear? What do you smell? What does it taste like? Is it talking to you? Does it make sounds? And I left them with that prompt and just let them explore on their own. And at first it took a little while, but eventually they were telling me all these great things that they were noticing. Oh, if you do this, it squishes. If you squish it really hard, water comes out. Why does water come out? Oh, it's a sponge, you know, and they came up with these ideas all by themselves. It smells like dirt. Mine has dirt on it. Why does it have dirt on it? Oh, it must live in the ground, you know, and they really figured it out. They figured out you could peel off parts of the mushroom on the cap. They turned it over and discovered the gills. And as they did this, I would just reiterate what they were saying. And then I would give them vocabulary. Oh yeah, you found the gills, you know, and we slowly learned together and explored the mushroom this way. And it was a really fun way for them to understand the scientific process, even though they didn't realize they were doing that. They were just—
It sounds like they probably learned a lot of new words, huh?
Yeah, and that's a part of this program. It's called wordplay. So we really try to enhance vocabulary through this. Yeah. Okay,
Very
so
cool.
is this correct? Yes. So these are my little kiddos looking at things through tools. We talked about scientific tools as well. And you know, learning is not necessarily the goal. Exploration was the goal, but they just naturally learn in a really easy way. And you know, as an educator, sometimes it's hard to sit there and watch this exploration happen, because they make exploration choices that as an adult, I probably wouldn't. And my adultness will get in the way sometimes. And I have to just kind of chill out and let it happen. And, you know, I always ask myself, also as a parent, this happens. I ask myself, is it dangerous? Is it destructive, whatever they're doing? Is it disrupting? And if it isn't any of those 3 things, then I just have to take a breath and walk away and let them peel that whole—
Let them play.
Exactly. So one thing actually that kept happening is I always had in every group a kid who would squish the mushroom into a flat, soggy, sloppy pancake for the entire class. And I thought it was disgusting, but there is definitely something going on there that they need to understand. And just because I'm not understanding why they're doing that doesn't mean it's not valuable. So that's something as a parent, especially because you're like, oh my God, you're making a mess, that you just have to kind of step away from. If it's not dangerous, destructive, or disruptive, it doesn't really matter. You know, it's there.
And children are extremely able to understand that there's certain times and places for things. So, you know, as a parent, we can have messy time and be really clear, now is messy time. Because I understand a lot of parents don't want all the time to be messy time. I get that. You know, I totally get that. But children they're able to understand, all right, now is messy time. And then when we clean up, we're not going to have messy time again until it's messy time. So you raise a good point.
Yeah, and you can bring back that, oh, I love that you're, you know, taking your mushroom apart in 100 different ways. Maybe we can do that tomorrow outside, you know, and you can redirect that and actually have the chance for them to take apart a mushroom however they want to. But let me move on. Okay, so this is my favorite part because I am very theatrical. I cut out little circular pieces of paper and I told them a story, and they created the story through theater and movement. So what we're doing here is we are the wind and we have a spore in our hand, and we blew our spore and talked about what would happen. And our spore landed on a shoe, on the carpet, on the table, on our head, you know, and we talked about what would happen if a spore actually landed here. And they learned a lot about what viable growing spots look like for mushrooms, but they had so much fun doing it.
They're having a great time.
Yeah. And we did this forever, and we did it in different ways. They helped each other, which prompted a lot of talk about wind. And we used, you know, pieces of paper, and we did all kinds of things to make our spores move around. And you would think that 20 children blowing pieces of paper around the classroom would be insane, and it was, but it was really easy to reel them in and have them, you know, they were always part of what we were doing, even though they were a little overexcited sometimes. But that's part of the learning process. They should be excited, you know, they should be excited about it. But it was fun, especially fun to see them working together, you know, and enjoying working together, you know, which is something that sometimes you don't get with 2 and 3-year-olds who are really tiny. As we talked about the, you know, styles and stages of play, 2 and 3-year-olds don't normally work together, but in this case they did, and that was pretty fun to see. Whoops. There we go. So as we went on and our spores found places to be, we put into our bodies, you know, how do you float through the space? And we floated around to music, and we found nice, gentle places to fall, and we got all cozy and warm and put dirt on ourselves. And we started to look for water and food and friends, our mushroom friends. And I asked them, how does a plant or a seed do that? And they came up with the idea of roots. And so I asked them to use their bodies to find water, and they started using their arms and their legs or their noses or their belly buttons. And, you know, what does that look like? And how would you do it? And when you find a friend, see if you can grab on and connect. And so we spent a good chunk of time dancing around the room and rolling on the floor. And then we added music to it. And we taught, you know, I had them make a sound. What does that sound like? You know, and I think anybody walking by at that point would be like, oh my God, what is going on in there? But it was fantastic to see them doing this. And once we had all connected, we talked about, oh, look, this is our community. This is our mycelium. and we can talk to each other all through this network. And we did it over and over again using that word, mycelium network, root systems. And they eventually were using those words as well, which was pretty cool. Let me move to the next slide. Okay, now at this point, the kids could tell me that mushrooms have spores, and that spores blow through the air and they land in the ground and they look for water and food. And then they start growing these little hyphae that poke up and poke down. And they also know that somehow they connect together and create a network. And so I asked them, what happens when you plant a seed or a spore in the ground? And so I said, why don't you be a tiny little seed? How small can you make your body? Show me how small. And they made these little tiny shapes. And I went over and put dirt on them, and I put a little rain on them, and I put a little food on them. And I said, now what happens? And all by themselves, every single class just would start growing and getting bigger and making shapes. And it was amazing. And I would narrate what was happening. Oh my gosh, my mushrooms are growing. My mushrooms are all different shapes and all different colors and sizes. It's beautiful. And they would work really hard to make different shapes from the person next to them, which was really fun to see. And of course, we had to do that a lot because they loved that. And another thing I could do was walk around and say, oh no, this mushroom right here, he's poisonous. We can't touch him, that's dangerous. Oh, but this mushroom is a mushroom we eat. And this mushroom we can make medicine out of. And so they learned a lot about what the role of mushrooms was just from this little dance exploration that we did. So a week
Can I
later,
ask you actually, Amber,
Yeah.
you knew that you were going to be focusing on the mycelium network. And I imagine you knew that some of these provocations you were going to provide. But I also imagine that there was that openness, even though it was different than how you would do things at Twirl. It was a little bit more teacher-centered, right? But there was still room for them to kind of
explore.
decide where the play and the learning was going to go. Is that right?
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's pretty amazing. There's a general understanding that children have. And so the fact that I could go, I did this program in 32 classrooms.
Oh, wow.
Every time I did it, it was generally the same storyline.
Oh,
The kids
interesting.
generally come up with the same things, and there were variations of it, but for the most part, they understood, oh, plants have roots, and oh, plants grow. And, it was interesting, even with the little ones, I would say. So sometimes they needed, especially the little ones, help moving in that direction. But I would say from 3 years and up, it was amazing how every class pretty much said the same thing. And I find that over and over, they're going to discover what I hope they discover.
Right.
But they're going to do it on their own. They will do it. And I have that faith now because I've done it over and over. Yeah. So, and I learned things too, we learn together for sure. But so I came back a second time and I brought with me, this is more of the teaching end. I brought with me this rope, and I had them each be a mushroom, and I would connect them with this rope. And as I did that, I reiterated all the things we had learned from the last week. And this really helped them visualize what the mycelium network does. And I said, look, we're all a family now, and we have to check in on each other and make sure that we're doing okay. So talk through your mycelium network and call each other and see if you're okay. And, someone would shake their rope and go, ring, ring, you okay over there, Hunter? Ring, ring, yeah, I'm okay. And they had all these conversations across the web. And it was so funny. They were so focused. It was completely silent.
You can see there that they are wickedly focused.
Yeah.
Doesn't look like anyone Are they looking at you
Um,
in that picture, or do you remember?
No, they're looking at whoever's talking. Whoever's talking at
But
that
they're
point.
all really into it. You could just see that by their body
Yeah.
language and their eye gaze. They're way into it.
And they, in fact, I would say half of the classrooms after we did this went and got rope, and they do it for other things too.
Oh, how
'Cause
wonderful.
yeah,
How
they were
wonderful.
exactly. Yeah, so that was really fun. And then I did bring them a little mushroom farm. And this was really cool because they were able to see what the mycelium actually looked like. And they could also see how the mushrooms went through the different phases that we talked about. I left the mushroom farm there with them, and they watched it for the next few weeks. And a lot of the teachers had a center around that mushroom farm. So they would, whatever they were doing that week, whether it was cooking or building or drawing, it was around the mushrooms, which was pretty fun. And at this point, the kids were calling me Farmer Amber. So, and here's another picture. But yeah, so it was fun for them to actually touch. And I did, as I said, I went to 32 classrooms, and out of all those kids, about 20 kids per classroom, I had one kid who had a mushroom allergy.
Oh, wow.
She kind of ballooned up because we didn't know, her mom didn't know either. She ballooned
Oh,
up in
until then, wow.
Yeah, so
Oops.
I do want to caution that is a possibility, and to make sure that the teachers know if you're going to bring in a mushroom farm, that the parents are aware of that.
Right.
Do it.
And those mushroom farms actually grow quite a few mushrooms just from the box like that?
And they grow twice, so you can have 2 crops. You cut off the first crop, and then it regenerates again.
Wow.
And yeah, we cooked with them, we ate them, we touched them, we squished them, we did all sorts of things. So the mushroom farms are amazing.
Water on them.
We ordered them off of Amazon. They're pretty fun. So the final project was creating their own mushrooms out of modeling clay. And I did bring in the clay and the corks, but the only prompt I gave them was, if you were a mushroom, what would you look like? And so and from there, I just kind of, again, stepped away, let them do their thing. They had a whole 40 minutes to do whatever they want. And it was really fun to see. They worked really hard to create that mushroom shape. Not everyone did, some had spikes and some had buttons and some had, I don't know, pencil shavings. And the cool thing was some of the kids would use their pencil and they'd draw designs or gills on the bottom. And it was really cool to see. And then we put all of those mushrooms together, and we created kind of a mushroom community for each classroom. And then this was presented at the Paseo. Every single classroom, their little community garden was presented, and they got to see what it looked like to be part of this mycelium network. And we talked about how they are connected as a classroom, and then how they are connected as a community. And it was really beautiful to see.
Well, those are a whole bunch of little mini mushrooms.
Yeah.
It's like a giant fairy village.
Isn't it cute? They were so proud to bring their parents and their grandmas and everyone to come find their mushroom.
How long did that stay in that space for?
This was a temporary installation for 3 days for the Paseo, as part of the Paseo.
Oh, okay. That you talked about in the beginning.
Yeah, exactly. We did a similar workshop with the community, and they created mushrooms as well.
Very cool.
Yeah, these were fired and are now a permanent part of the Twirl Play Yard.
Wow.
So,
Do you have a plaque, or do you have some kind of documentation up that sort of tells the whole story of everything with along with that?
No, and we should. That's a really good idea.
Because it's such a beautiful story. It totally is, and something I think in this current time of, I don't like to call it social distancing. I tend to call it physical distancing, because we are still completely social humans, right? And we are completely connected. And what a great message to be sharing out,
Yes.
to the world now as a reminder. Wow. That's awesome. I'm wondering, through all of that, what you learned about children's play, what you learned about, children and their, I think, really easy ability, if we give them the room and the space and the freedom to wonder.
Yes.
And to ask questions.
That's the thing about learning. Learning should be this interest and this drive to want to know, right? And if you put them children in a situation where they can ask questions and they can explore and they can, I want to know more, tell me more, they're going to learn. There's no way you can force somebody to learn something.
Right.
They have to want to do it. And so it's about creating these spaces and opportunities for kids to ask and to want to know.
Exactly. And I think it's more important now than ever because of, again, going back to that Peter Gray talk, just the really dire statistics around the lack of play and things like the rates of depression, even like suicide, things like that, like these really horrific things are being raised up, and there's a direct connection back to oftentimes not having a childhood where we're allowed to explore and to wonder and to play. So, I know you and I are two peas in a pod in terms of really understanding that play is the work of the child, like Maria Montessori said. It's so very, very, very important. What is a project that we don't know whether we'll be back into the schools, but what is a project that you're hoping to do if that's the case this year? I'm curious what's kind of percolating in your mind.
That's a good question. I hadn't actually thought about it. I actually got cut off midway in my current project, which was all about the census and teaching about the American census to tiny citizens. And it was really interesting to talk about families and talk about, what is the census? Who is your family? Why does that matter? With all these little people, I see these little people all the time. But I learned about them in a whole new way doing this project with them, because it was me stepping inside their lives. Mm-hmm. And it was really cool. So I'd love to continue doing that, outside of the census, because it really gives me insight into each of these children, and they want so much to share their lives with people. So
absolutely. Do your children, some of those children that you were engaging with in the school, would they then come into Twirl and you would see them there?
Yeah, both. We, I do a 6-week program in the schools, and most of the schools in Taos I've been in. And then they in turn bring their classrooms for just a day at Twirl, but also they come in as just citizens and play there. So we interact all different ways with these families.
And you have kind of a small community. I love Taos. I would live there in it, like heart.
Oh yeah.
Just saying, I would. I totally would. Well, do you want to say anything more about this particular study before we share the screen back to me for the last few slides?
I just want to share one more slide.
Yes, please.
This is what looked like the day of the Paseo, or the weekend of the Paseo. we created all these mushrooms out of recycled material and trash. And then we encouraged people to come crawling in, rolling in, and see what the world looked like from underneath the
Oh yeah, you could see the kids underneath. I didn't recognize that till you said that.
And people would spend all evening there. They would just roll around and lie down and hang out with their families. And it was just the most magical thing.
It looks like very Meow Wolf.
Yeah, well, actually, that is now at Meow Wolf.
Really?
Yeah,
I think I had heard that. So that's installed in the Santa Fe Meow Wolf.
exactly. Yeah.
What part of Meow Wolf can you visit it in?
I think it is in I don't know what it's technically called, but it's the arts and crafts room where they do story time and all that stuff.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
That's so cool. What a great, great, great story. Thanks so much for sharing about that. I'm really looking forward to coming and visiting you at Twirl sometime. And
If you ever have a chance to come to the Paseo, it is one of the coolest things you could see.
I would love to.
Yeah, it usually
Absolutely.
it's not this year, unfortunately, but it's usually in September.
You don't have to convince me to to come to Taos. It really is one of my favorite places, and I definitely I lived in Silver City for a number of years, and I love Silver as well. But if I were going to leave where I live in the East Mountains now, it would definitely be to Taos.
Yeah,
I love it, hands down. So this is your little outdoor space.
yeah. This is our courtyard.
It's
And then
gorgeous.
is a play space and classroom, and then there's
So
a
cool.
a toy shop downstairs.
Nice.
Yeah.
And you guys aren't open now, but
No.
you're doing some kind of programming still, right?
We have live classes every day at 11 on our Facebook page,
Okay.
and we do
So
mindfulness.
parents listening, that's great. Great. It's a free resource, I'm assuming,
Yep. Mhm.
to log in and watch every day, Monday through Friday at 11 a.m.
11 a.m.
Okay. So tell
Mind-
us about some of those classes, like what is offered.
Yeah, we have a mindfulness Monday. We have
Hey, we do too. We should pair. We do a mindfulness Monday. Well, we offer a mindful moment, I should say. But tell me more about Mindfulness Monday.
yeah, so it's run by a woman named Kendra Peralta, who is just an incredible educator and a yoga, she's been into yoga her whole life. And so she does these great, just checking in with yourself and understanding with yourself. And they're always fun and they're always play-based. So they're really fun for kids. My little guy does it. And then on Tuesday, there's a music class for families. Wednesday, we have a dance class. Thursday is theater play. And then Friday, we have what is it called? Oh my goodness. It's all about emotions and understanding emotions on Fridays. So
That sounds so great. So, and that's nice to know that you're doing that with Nature Niños as well as with Soul Forest School, where I'm the director. It was a stretch to kind of bring that to the Zoom world or to the Facebook Live world. But I'm really proud of, early educators out there who were stepping up and creating these experiences. So any parents listening, I will make sure that we reconnect your Twirl website. That sounds like a wonderful resource. Yeah. Monday through Friday at 11 o'clock every day.
And
how
you can
awesome.
Find out all of our information. We have a lot of COVID resources on our website at twirltaos.org.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Amber. We're going to get ready to wrap up here. And I just wanted to leave our parents who are still with us with just some really, quick, simple ideas of what kind of wonderful play you can easily incorporate into your child's life. We do not need to go out and buy all the newest gadgets and toys and fancy things. Children are often much happier with the simple pleasures. It's sort of that idea of I don't know, suppose you need to order a new refrigerator, and the refrigerator arrives in a big, huge box, and your children have all kinds of bling and all kinds of toys to play with and all kinds of things at their disposal. And all they want to do for the next week is play with that box, you know? And the reason why is because that box is open-ended, and it can be a rocket ship one day. It could be a city bus the next day. It could be a, I don't know, 10-story building the following day. You know, it's open-ended and unlimited. So that leads me into this idea of loose parts. A box is sort of a classic loose part. Sounds like something you do really well at Twirl too. And what are loose parts, and what does loose parts play? Well, loose parts are open-ended materials that can be moved, carried, combined, redesigned, lined up, and taken apart and put back together in multiple ways. Loose parts can be used alone or combined with other materials. There's no set of specific directions for materials that are considered to be loose parts. The child is in charge of the direction that loose parts play takes, which is really great. And loose parts play is highly engaging and motivating, and encourages creativity and problem solving. There is a woman on YouTube, I'm forgetting her name, but I will again connect during the week, her page, but she is a mother who is inspired by something called the Reggio Emilia approach, which focuses very much on loose parts. Reggio Emilia approach is an early childhood approach that is born out of post-World War II Italy. It is an approach to being with children that Amber and myself are very familiar with. And again, they rely very heavily on the use of loose parts as well as natural materials, and 100 languages, which is thinking that a child comes into the world with 100 languages, all different ways to express themselves, and we can use materials to support that. So I would definitely recommend as a parent to be thinking about what you have on hand and how you might be able to organize things. A few simple baskets, you know, one basket with seashells, one with toilet paper tubes, one with lids that you've collected from, you know, your yogurt containers, your milk jugs, you know, whatever it is. Loose parts are really, really endless, and it's quite amazing to see what children can come up with when they have loose parts at their disposal. And loose parts can come really large too. You know, in your backyard, this is something likely that will come into play when we do the next module on designing with a dime. Look at how much fun this little girl on the left is having. And those are all easily sourced, simple materials that allow for open-ended, endless imagination and reconfiguration. And, you know, something is one thing one day and it's something else the next day. So loose parts are a really, really great way to go. And you can look online, literally, if you were to Google loose parts or loose parts play, a million different resources will pop up, and we will at Nature Niños again post some other resources for you through the week. There's also natural loose parts. So looking over to the right, you can see one basket has sticks and twigs in it. It looks like that little pail might have some stones or what we call tree cookies, which is like a branch that's been sliced. That's another way to go, you know. What's really nice about the use of loose parts from a sort of environmental or green or sustainability perspective is it's a way of recycling, essentially. When I was, the last gig before running my forest school, I was the director at a preschool, and, you know, I'm a big tea drinker. I would collect the tea tins that my tea came in. And I was just a little bit mindful because I like when something looks like it is a set. So there was one particular tea that I drank a lot of, a Yunnan Gold black tea. And I waited until I had about 10 or a dozen of those little tea tins, and I gave those to one of my teachers. And, you know, the kids loved it. They used that to build towers with. Old VHS tapes we had in our classroom too. You know, there's all kinds of things you could do for building. So loose parts, parents, you know, get your loose parts on. And there is also, this is not quite loose parts, but when my son was young, I used to like to put together little boxes. I would get those plastic sort of shoe boxes from the dollar store, and I'd have different themes. So one might be office, and I'd put in there like a little stapler, and like pen and pencil, and a little notepad, and things that you might find in an office. Another one might be like Play-Doh play. Another one might be stamps. It's another way that you can kind of organize play and keep it organized that your children will love. And you could change things out too. Believe it or not, less is more. I don't have a reference to this person here, but there is a man called Kim John Payne. He is an author, and he's written a book called Simplicity Parenting. And he talks you through in his book how, as a parent, actually minimizing the amount of stuff your children have will maximize joy, pleasure, organization, self-regulation for the children, all kinds of good stuff. And I have a mother at Soul Far School who has been reading this book as per my recommendation. And she came to me the other day and she said, oh my gosh, I totally revamped the boys' rooms. I'm not going to buy any new toys for a really long time. I put a bunch of stuff in the garage. So if we get to that point where they're like, and I sense that they need something more, all I have to do is go out to the garage and pull something I already had down. And she's loving it. So I think with these ideas that we're sharing today too, if you think about all of the things that Amber shared, it was simple arts and crafts supplies, right, Amber? All of those materials that you had for that project were simple arts and crafts, correct?
Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, the only thing that I did purchase was the clay and the mushrooms, and everything else was, created by the kids.
Exactly. I mean, I think we need to get away from this idea that we have to buy something to entertain our children. It can start from when they're 1 and you're cooking dinner and you have them at your feet while you're in the kitchen, and you give them a few metal bowls and wooden spoons to play with. And that is like magic for a young child. So arts and crafts, thinking about little themed play boxes, I think is a really, great idea. I remember having one around the holidays for gift wrapping, and I would just put Scotch tape in there and ribbons and wrapping paper in little boxes, because kids love to get their hands on that. They like to practice doing what they see us doing. Loose parts in all kinds of forms. And then, the last one I wanted to encourage you around right now, and it's kind of just perfect that this is where we'll be ending, because it's kind of where we started when we shared our nature memories, or our childhood play memories. All of us that shared, they were nature-based, is the idea of nature play. I just love this picture. It's the daughter of a friend of mine who's an avid gardener. And I mean, just look at her. She looks just like so into being in that kale forest there. And she's been given a little tool, so she gets to do something there, so play has purpose. It's an important thing to remember too. Natural play or nature play challenges and fascinates children and teaches them about the wonders and intricacies of the natural world while they explore and play within it. It is intuitive and unstructured, constructive or deconstructive, and timeless, encouraging interaction with natural materials, features, indigenous vegetation, and creative landforms. Natural play is often a blend of materials and experiences to create purposely complex interplays of natural and environmental objects. It's also free. You have it in your backyard, or you can go to the park. You can go out into the forest. Of course, there are some areas where we're not allowed to pick things or what have you, but if you're tuning in from New Mexico, we have so many natural, beautiful places right in our backyard. So these are just some more pictures of nature play. The one on the left was from our last module on gardening goodness with young children. Good old fort. Get out into the woods and build a fort, find a worm, This is all great STEM and science learning, but for the young child, it's also, you know, a vehicle to play. It is a happy talent to know how to play, said Ralph Waldo Emerson. So I think we're going to leave it here unless anybody's got any final comments or questions, but thanks to everyone for being here today.
Thank you so much. That was
You
really.
are welcome. Thank you, Amber. I'll be in touch for more other collaborations for sure, okay? All right, Nature Niños, we're out. We'll see you the next time.
Get out there and play.
Bye-bye, people. Get out there and play. That's right.